Republican side, Amy, some polls coming out that are making the doubters of Donald Trump.
What doubters of Donald Trump?
Grind their teeth and put on sackcloth and ashes. Let's look at the latest Donald Trump poll. This is Fox News nationwide. Jeb Bush in first at 15. Donald Trump at 11%. And of course, there was the Suffolk poll out of New Hampshire that we showed last hour and a couple days ago that also shows Donald Trump within a statistical dead heat, first place with there we go, with Jeb Bush. So the question is, who should be afraid of Donald Trump? The Republican Party itself?
Certainly the Republican Party and all of those other contenders, where Donald Trump is drowning them out and drowning out their message because he's able to attract so much attention to the Donald Trump circus that comes to town. But what you're also seeing on the conservative side, we earlier were talking about scrutiny, and does scrutiny hurt Donald Trump among conservatives? And it certainly does. That in the conservative press, they're saying Donald Trump really actually isn't a conservative. He's a populist. He's a protectionist. He's also a crony capitalist. That Donald Trump, when it comes to policy, he does suffer when it comes to conservative scrutiny.
Doesn't look like he's suffering, though.
He's not yet. It's very early on. Donald Trump
doesn't strike me as a type that's going to suffer, though. I mean, he's talking those populist issues that Ross Perot talked about.
Right, and Ross Perot didn't win the primary, although obviously he was a spoiler in the general.
But Ross Perot also didn't have 20 Republicans running against him in a primary. I just wonder whether 15%, Trump's 15%, helps him come in first or second in the first couple of states.
Well, I don't know. I think it's far too early to be talking about the first couple of states. We haven't even gotten to the debate stage yet.
Are you a Trump fan?
Am I a Trump fan? I don't watch his TV shows, if that's what you're asking. Politically,
how do you think?
Of course not. And I think the birther business was very discrediting of Donald Trump, obviously. But again, conservative scrutiny on Donald Trump policy-wise does him no favors.
You mentioned that big field, Joe. 13 Republicans now officially vying for the party's nomination. This after Louisiana's Bobby Jindal entered the race last night. The two-term governor, former congressman, not mincing any words when it comes to his conservative ideals, his faith, and his opponents.
Democrats evaluate success in terms of the prosperity of government. We define success in terms of the prosperity of our people. I know that some believe that I talk about my faith too much, but I will not be silenced. I will not be silenced in order to meet their expectations of political correctness. You've heard Jeb Bush say that we need to be willing to lose the primary in order to win the general election. We're going to help him do that. Let me translate that for you. I want to translate that political speak into plain English. What Jeb Bush is saying is that we need to hide our conservative ideals. But the truth is, if we go down that road again, we will lose again. Americans don't play to lose. President Obama has it wrong. Secretary Clinton has it wrong. Our allies need to trust us. Our enemies need to fear us. It is time we play to win again.
Mark Halpern, Governor Jindal being called a long shot, upside, downside to his candidacy.
Well, the upside is that he is one of the most talented and exceptional people of his generation in brain power, and he's got a pretty accomplished record in talking about policy issues across the board. The downside is he's got 14 people to climb over or so to get to the top of the heap, and his record, as we said before, in Louisiana is going to be tough to defend and run on.
So on that downside, Lawrence O'Donnell, we have Alan Greenblatt writing in Politico that this former Rhodes Scholar with serious policy chops is completely dumbing down his campaign.
Well, you know, I don't know where you get the idea that this is the smart guy in the campaign. Donald Trump says he is the smartest guy in the campaign, and I don't understand.
Donald Trump says it. It must be true.
It has to. What, I mean, who would doubt that? You know, look, it's sad to see what happens to these candidates when they get into this thing. But look, they're in a field where they look at a poll, and 11% right now, and these are going for Donald Trump. Republican primary voters are given an intelligence test every 4 years.
By the way, 10 are going for Ben Carson.
Yeah, and the Republican primary voters are given an intelligence test every 4 years by the pollsters. And a shocking number of them do very, very badly in that intelligence test. And what they're not attracted to in that polling is, Rhodes Scholar type resume points.
Well, look, if you look back to 2008, Mayor Giuliani was well ahead of the contenders early on in that contest. And as we all saw after his first performance on that debate stage in New Hampshire, he sunk like a stone.
Right.
So I think looking at these polling numbers, while it's fun and exciting to talk about, doesn't tell you very much about what's going to happen
So I just think,
year.
though, the one sort of conversation in between the lines about Donald Trump that I wonder, especially about you two, is there this sort of almost kind of inability to put your arms around him in the media?
Excuse me?
Hold on.
That imagery.
Hold on.
No.
Even the way you're at.
No.
Inability to intellectually put your arms around him in the media echo chamber, which you are in. And yet you go out into America and Donald Trump walks down any street in America, hold on.
Yeah.
And he is surrounded by as many people as are there to take pictures and love him and want to be a part of whatever it is that he's got. And that's not just
And he's
a
the
Sarah
most
Palin
disliked
thing.
candidate
That's his
ever
story.
to run for president in history.
So let me
Ever.
ask you a question, Lawrence, and
Most
try and
disliked.
answer it honestly, okay? And try and
Okay,
get
ask the
your
question. Go
try
ahead.
and
I wanna
get
hear I wanna hear the
your
answer.
personal feelings about him out of the way and think about it logically. Does he have the ability to significantly wound another Republican presidential candidate?
Oh, sure. Simply in this
So
game
he does have a serious impact potentially.
Well, and yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, because that whole rule about who gets on the debate stage, he's going to bump someone off.
Yes, but also with his words. Does he have the ability, unlike anybody else in the race, to liquefy, to use your word?
I don't think so. I think if he does that in one debate, they'll come back and crush him the next time. If they realize, we have to actually debate against him, we have to fight him on the stage,
right.
they'll crush him because he's got the most ridiculous record on all subjects, including being in favor of giant tax increases and all sorts of things that he doesn't talk about. But a Republican can crush him with things he has said.
He's also expressed being a fan of Hillary Clinton, which certainly is not going to go over with Republican primary voters. But also remember, I don't think Donald Trump has ever been in a position of having to debate others on his point of view. And generally when he gets into these fights, like with Rosie O'Donnell, for example, he just descends into the mud.
But let me ask you
and
this, Lawrence, I asked you about Bobby Jindal, and you just obsessed about Donald Trump. You just jumped back into it, which is why
I'm here for the fun. Are you kidding me?
I don't know. There's something in there.
No, I got to say, the Trump candidacy this time, I'm finding to have a much higher amusement factor than the fake candidacy last time, which was driven by so much racial animus toward the president and so much vile stuff that was coming out of him. And now, he said that poisonous stuff about people coming over the border, but everything else he says is just plain funny.
Do you think, Lawrence, he taps into the id of some Americans, though? I don't know how large that percentage is. I don't know if it's frustration or anger or perceived weakness of the United States in this moment. Do you think he speaks to an audience?
I think if you seriously want to vote for Donald Trump to become president, you have failed an intelligence test of how government works. What I'd like to think is everybody in there is helping us. They're saying, you know what? We want to get him on the stage. They're voting like American Idol voters. It's just we want to keep him on the stage. This is too funny.
So let me ask you one final question. I'm making no comparisons here. But what you just said about Donald Trump in 2015, would not 98% of the national media have said about Ronald Reagan in 1979?
No,
I can find you quotes.
No. Ronald Reagan, you might remember, was the actual governor of California.
I understand.
It's a very different case. It's a very different case.
But he was still mocked and ridiculed.
He wasn't mocked in the
terribly.
mainstream media that way at all. There was a lot of comment out there, certainly, where I'm from in Boston, there was a lot of comment about, this former actor and a bad actor and all that stuff. But he was taken very seriously as a candidate. He was taken seriously as a candidate the first time he ran and lost.
And I would add to that Ronald Reagan had a deeply developed political platform, his ideas about the Cold War. With Donald Trump, how deep does it really go? And once he's actually pushed on policy, I think you're going to see a lot of Republican contenders having a lot of fun.
Mark Halpin, you weigh in finally on this.
Just what you referred to before, this is a Republican field unlike any we've seen. 12% could win Iowa or New Hampshire. And I think everything that's been said about Trump's vulnerabilities is true. But if he continues to spend money and grow and be Donald Trump, who's to say he can't end up with 12, 15% in one of these two states?
He's not going to spend
and win
money.
the thing?
He's not. He doesn't have to. We're going to publicize him without him spending money. He's too cheap to waste his money on a losing campaign.
Okay, Lawrence, thank you very much. No, I think it's a fascinating conversation. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I also don't think he's to be counted out as someone who's not going to make it or not going to have a serious impact on this race. I've seen him say things that people don't have the guts to say that are true about other candidates and other people, and that's kind of an sort of a wild card in the.
It's definitely a loose cannon, that one.
The highest percentage of voters in the history of polling say, I will never vote for him under any circumstances to be
But
president
he's
of
got
anything.
12% in New Hampshire. So what?
12%. That's what it
He's
is.
second in New Hampshire.
You think that's going to go up?
Hey, you know what? We're suddenly like an Italian democracy here. The prime minister gets 14.5% and
All right.
87 parties. So anyway, Lawrence has a special tonight on MSNBC called The Racing Eight. In it, he explores the motivations behind white supremacists like Dylan Roof. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, this is it tracks an individual's experience who sunk into that world and got himself covered in tattoos expressing white supremacy. And the journey you watch him go through is not only cleansing his mind and his spirit of all of that, which he's done, but now he's stuck covered in these tattoos, and he has to do what he can to get the tattoos removed. And so it's this fascinating thing that he goes through. And look, mothers around America are wondering, what does it take to get that tattoo removed?
Exactly.
Willie and I, back in the 80s after the Stray Cats broke, had tattoos.
I don't want to.
Right.
Little did we
Cleaned up
know.
good.
Little did we know Stray Cat Strut would only be on the charts for like 15 weeks. It's been a really painful 3 days.
We had stray cat fever, and it
You guys
broke
still have
quickly.
some.
Look at it, it broke quickly.
Where are your tattoos?
Well, they're all like from here
Sleeves,
to
yeah.
here, man. They're all over. Stray Cat Strut.
That is the
ladies'
worst
man.
visual image.
Yeah.
Lawrence O'Donnell, thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very much.
It's always
You
great
can
having you.
catch Lawrence's special at 10 o'clock
Straight
tonight right here on MSNBC. Still ahead on Morning Joe. Governor Rick Scott was just reelected in Florida, so what's with his new campaign in Connecticut? We'll ask him. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be
What?
right back, huh?